You've actually run one of these. You know what a gargantuan task this is. How much more difficult is it because we've been delayed at least some time getting it started?
Needlessly more. Now, I will say, obviously, the president-elect's team has been assembled. They have been working diligently on policies and generating staffing recommendations for the president-elect, both in the White House. He's already named his chief of staff, and also in the cabinet. They're going through a vetting process for that. But in the midst of a pandemic, with millions of Americans losing their jobs, it is more important than ever that the agencies be available to the transition team. And I always say that one of the things that surprised me with President Obama's transition was the unbelievable degree of cooperation we received from President Bush. Now, we may not have agreed with him on policies, but what President Bush believed is in the smooth and orderly transition of power. And when President Obama was leaving office, we did the exact same thing at his direction for President Trump, because this isn't about politics. It's about keeping our country safe, keeping it healthy. And if you think about, there's been a focus on the presidential daily briefing that the president-elect isn't getting, but we have 16 different intelligence agencies, and the team that the president-elect assembled should be in each of those agencies right now, finding out the information that won't make it to the presidential briefing for another 6 months, but will need to be acted upon on day one. And so we are at peril. It's totally irresponsible. It's putting us at risk. And for what? There's no need for this. The election has been called. And even if the president wanted to pursue his lawsuits, that there is nothing that prevents him from, by the same token, going down a path for a transition.
Well, sooner or later, there will be a transition. I think I'm comfortable saying. And we're hearing from some Republicans, they're starting to move in that direction, that we're getting toward that time. Let's talk about that transition. And you referred to the team around the president. You helped President Obama really put together that team. You helped pick those people. When you're putting together a team like that, what are you looking for? How do you get a team together that is really consistent with your views, but at the same time brings a diversity of viewpoints?
Well, that's something that's very important to the president-elect. He's made that clear that he wants a team that reflects the rich diversity of our country, because he believes he will make better decisions if he's advised by people who don't just think like him. They share his values, that's important, but they have different life experiences, and that began with the selection of his vice president. Obviously, the vice president-elect Harris, qualified, experienced, track record of leadership, but she has a different life experience, and he wanted to make sure that the last person who talks to him is somebody who he trusts, but doesn't always see the world the same way that he does. And I think we're going to see in both the White House and in the cabinet that rich diversity.
I'm not sure, Valerie, whether we've all fully absorbed the significance, the historic significance of that vice presidential pick. The first black vice president, the first Indian American vice president, first woman, as a matter of fact. So what is that going to symbolize for the country, but also what effect might Kamala Harris have within the White House?
Well, I think she's going to be a powerful voice, and that's what he said he wanted, which I think reflects not only well on her, but also well on him. She's shattering through glass ceilings of all kinds, as you mentioned, David. She will be a role model for people all across the country and the world about the new look of leadership. But she also is going to help him make really tough decisions and bring her life experiences to bear on that. And that's what he says he wants, not just as his vice president, but throughout the administration. Already the transition team is majority women, it's near majority people of color. And so he's off to a very good start. And I think that you can tell a lot about a person by who they surround themselves with. And since I know so many of the folks on the team well, I am really impressed. I know that he will hit the ground running, but to return again, David, it would be so much easier if we had the full cooperation of the Trump administration. When I say we, I mean our country, because this is really about putting country first.
Every new president comes in with a very full inbox, I think it's fair to say. But this president in particular, the President Biden, when he takes office, is going to have the coronavirus. He's got economic issues. He has a lot of issues domestically before he gets to international issues. At the same time, there are pressing issues that you really took some ownership of when you were in the White House. Things like racial justice, things like how we're dealing with working mothers who are particularly hard hit right now. For example, here in New York City, as their kids are not in school, the working mothers have a very difficult time. What can the White House, what can the administration do without the cooperation of the Congress in those areas?
Well, tone starts at the top, and I think he's already signaled that his first priority is to get his arms around this COVID-19 pandemic. He's already assembled a task force that's hard at work. We'll be making recommendations to him about steps to go forward to not only to contain it, but once we have the vaccine, to make sure that people actually get vaccinated in a fair and equitable way. He has always been an advocate for working families, and I think the pandemic has laid bare challenges that have existed for a long time. Paid equal pay, paid leave, paid sick days. We know that women are suffering disproportionately in this pandemic, and that's why he said when we build America back, we have to build it back better. So, what are the levers we can turn as we craft a recovery package? And look, when he came in 2009, President Obama asked his then vice president to be responsible for that $800 billion Recovery Act and make sure that the resources were going where they were needed most. And so he is well prepared to do this again. And in fact, his chief of staff that he just selected was the same person who was his chief of staff at that time. So he has got to, he said the only way we're going to grow our economy is to get our arms around this pandemic. And I will say, sitting here watching it spiral out of control with no leadership coming from the White House day after day after day, with reaching 250,000 people dead, just think about those Thanksgiving tables where there are going to be so many empty seats in our country. And so, again, that's why this is a critical time as that virus is spiking. So, yes, he has to get his arms around it. And to the point you raised in terms of the racial healing and criminal justice reform, that's also a priority. But here's the good news. One thing I know about President-elect Biden is he can multitask. And his policy shops will be working on all of the issues that he articulated in his campaign to be true to his word. He will rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. He will make sure that we are being responsible in our relationships with our allies around the world. He will take care of the dreamers. He will end the Muslim ban. He will rejoin the World Health Organization. These are all steps that he can take on his own without Congress, but he also has made it very clear that he intends to work with members of Congress. And I think because of the track record he had as a member of the Senate for so long, he has deep and strong relationships. And that's part of what's been so disappointing in this transition, David, is that the people who know better are not putting pressure on the president to cooperate. The people who sit on the intelligence committees right now know the information they have access to, and they should want the president-elect to have that information too.
You worked closely with then Vice President, now President-elect Biden, so you know him terribly well. As you look at him, how would you think that he might govern in a way that is similar to President Obama, albeit at a different time, so the issues are different? And how do you think he might be different from President Obama?
Well, I think they do share the same values, the same sense that we have to look out for all of America and not just some of America. When President-elect Biden campaigned and he said, I'm going to run as a Democrat, but I will govern for all of America, that reminded me of President Obama when he said there aren't red states and blue states, there are the United States of America. That sense that we should bring ourselves together and heal. And I think that you're right, he is taking office at a time where our country is particularly fractured and polarized. And I think he has just the right tone and message and policies that will help bring us together and heal. And that is a deep wound that has to be healed. He received more votes than ever, any other president ever. Yeah, he has more popular votes by 5 million and counting than President Trump. But a big chunk of our country did vote for President Trump. And I think that because of his life experiences, because he's had all these years working on both sides of the aisle on the Hill, I think he does bring those relationships, which will be important to heal the country. But I also think he has a real gift for reaching out across the country and making people feel heard, making people feel valued, and knowing that he's on their side. And I will say this about both presidents. They woke up every morning, and I know this is what when I say both presidents, I mean President Obama and President-elect Biden will wake up every single morning thinking about the American people, not himself, not what's happening to him in the news, not criticism directed his way, but how to make our lives better.
So that's reaching out across America. What about reaching across the aisle? You referred to that earlier. At the same time, we all remember that when the Affordable Care Act came up, as I recall, there was not one single Republican vote for that. What are the prospects really for President Biden to reach across the aisle to Mitch McConnell, who has not been an easy customer from what we can see at least, and getting some things done?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. We tried mightily, and President-elect Biden was instrumental in this effort to reach across the aisle during the 8 years of President Obama's administration. And the Republicans made the political calculus that it was better to just say no, no matter what our overtures were. And I think that we're in a different time now. And I think the American people are sick and tired of this deadlock in Washington, this acrimony. And even though we see a lot of toxicity in social media, I think most people in America are good and decent people, and they want to see their government working. And the fact that they voted in record numbers in this election, David, compared to the 100 million who did not vote in 2016, what I hope is that that activism continues and that they put pressure on their elected representatives to say, "Look, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Get in there and work with the Biden administration." And I can certainly tell you that President-elect Biden will do his part. And he does have good relationships with them. And the posturing you might see on television probably doesn't show the respect that they have. There was a video circulating a while ago about Lindsey Graham, who spoke about Joe Biden soon after the death of Beau. And Lindsey Graham was moved to tears. And he said, "There is no finer man than Joe Biden." And I hope he holds that thought when Joe Biden is sworn in as president, and will work with him because that's what I think our country deserves.
Yeah.
And I hope the American people demand it.
Indeed, I want to wrap this up by coming back to where we were because there's news that's been breaking even as we've been talking. The CDC now is recommending social distancing, masks, and against travel for Thanksgiving. So the CDC is saying that given what you were talking about this surge in COVID, there can only be one president at a time. Would it be best for the country and perhaps for President-elect Biden if, in fact, we did have more leadership out of the White House right now on the COVID-19 issue?
Well, of course, we needed that leadership since day one, David. Look, I just canceled my plans. My mom is 92. It would be very important to me to be able to spend Thanksgiving with her. But I'm listening to the science, and so I would rather not see her this Thanksgiving and get to see her next Thanksgiving. And so, from day one, President Trump has tried to pretend that we were not in a crisis, and we gave him a roadmap. Speaking of the transition, of how to handle a pandemic. President Obama said back in 2014 we should expect a pandemic. We did a tabletop exercise for them saying these are the steps that we think you need to take today in order to be prepared for it. And they basically tossed it in the garbage. And then there's, it's going to disappear. It's going to disappear when the weather gets warm, when 2 weeks from now. And this has been going on forever. And in the meanwhile, we've lost 250,000 Americans, many who just simply did not need to die. So yes, we hunger for leadership from the White House because there is only one president at a time. But you will certainly hear President-elect Biden speak quite clearly and lead by example by wearing a mask, not mocking people who wear them, but showing what the science has proven. And this should not be a political issue, David. This is about following the science and keeping ourselves safe. So yes, I think we should all just settle down and spend this Thanksgiving being grateful for what we have and being prepared to take the steps necessary to not put either ourselves or others in jeopardy.